Dear friends, welcome. Welcome to Refill 100. The program of today is called The Philosophy of Travel, an interview with Ewan Macdonald. I hope you are doing well. And indeed, we are interviewing Ewan Macdonald, a traveler, or should I say, an adventurer, who a few years ago visited half of the world on a motorcycle. Mr. Macdonald, welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome to Refill 100, the channel where religious, philosophical, and scientific topics are talked about. Let us start by claiming that any traveler faces several questions, or perhaps dilemmas, when deciding about their trips. Questions such as where to go, how can I reach the place, what kinds of preparations I need come to mind. Was that also the case for Ewan Macdonald?
Well, where to go? I discovered that in 1995. I was in South Africa, also riding around on a motorcycle. And I discovered that in India, they still made British motorcycle, a Royal Enfield, a basic copy of a 1950s British motorcycle, a classic motorcycle. And I thought, well, that sounds like the place to go to. So when I got back to the UK in the summer of 1995, I planned to work for a year, save up some money, and then head out to India. As far as preparation went, I actually did a motorcycle test. I learned how to ride a motorcycle. In South Africa, I hadn't required a full motorcycle license, but I thought for India, I will get a full motorcycle license. I didn't do a great deal of preparation otherwise, apart from booking a hotel for my first few nights in Delhi. It was for me the spirit of adventure. I didn't want to plan a whole trip because it's nice to be able to adapt as things go along and just enjoy the ride.
Okay, so in the final analysis, what led Ewan Macdonald to decide about his traveling route? What was he trying to accomplish, or what was it that he was looking for?
Well, one word: adventure. Adventure. I think people say, "Oh, I go on holiday. I go to India to find myself." Well, I knew who I was and what I was. For me, it was a spirit of adventure.
Okay. Now, after all these years, in retrospect, did traveling teach Ewan Macdonald to see the world differently? And if so, in what ways?
Yes, I think it did in many ways. This trip we're talking about now I began it 26 and a half years ago in the autumn of 1996. I think what it taught me was actually how good people are. You hear a lot of negative things about people, but travel has taught me the kindness of people. So many times I've had problems and people have helped me. I mean, one story comes to mind. I've been in the north of Pakistan, up in the mountains in an area called Swat Valley. And I was riding back to Rawalpindi, which was about, for me, maybe an 8-hour ride. And I left this small hotel at 6 o'clock in the morning, and it was raining all day. And I was soaked, absolutely soaked to the skin. And I stopped at this truck stop, but the actual cafe was closed. And there were 4 or 5 men sitting down by a fire, and they saw me and they beckoned me over. And they could see I was soaking wet. And these kind people, they took my boots off, and just like in the old cartoons, they poured the water out of my boots. And they dried my socks over their fire. They gave me some warm tea. And these people did that out of pure kindness. There's no motivation for money. They didn't know me. We could barely communicate. But that act of human kindness left me not only with dry feet, but a really warm feeling about humanity in the way that people will help you. And I had many examples of people helping me in dire situations. So it certainly boosted my faith in humanity. And I don't accept arguments when people say, oh, every people are bad, all these bad people. It's, you know, on my travels, I had nothing but kindness from people.
That's quite a testimony and quite an experience indeed. But I assume that maps played an important role in the planning process, or in any place in the way how you were reaching the different places. So in the experience of Ewan Macdonald, in what ways do maps correspond to reality, and in which ways they do not correspond to reality?
You know, I love maps. I just love looking at them and planning my journey for the next day along this windy red line. But the windy red line doesn't tell you that there's actually no road surface, and it's a dirt track for most of the way, full of potholes. That's part of the adventure. I think sometimes the scale of maps, because when I was in the south of India, I had this crazy idea that I could actually ride the motorcycle back to the UK. I looked on the map and it was about that far. I thought, well, you know, I can do that. And of course, I bought maps for each country I went to, and often they did correspond roughly to the roads, but until I really got to Iran, the quality of the road surfaces were pretty poor. And from Iran onwards, really, normal style roads, really.
Okay, well, but that leads me to the next question. With maps, with the differences between the map and reality, with all these experiences that you were collecting, can Mr. Macdonald say that there is a philosophy of travel? That is to say, is there a difference between traveling for the sake of traveling, and rather than traveling, going on a pilgrimage?
Well, for me, it's about the journey, and you will see a picture now of the motorcycle, a Royal Enfield 350, a very basic motorcycle with about 15 horsepower. So not the choice to travel of a speed warrior. It would probably go quite happily between 30 to 50 kilometers an hour in India on the roads there. Outside India, on a decent highway, it would do about 70 kilometers an hour. And journeys took a long time. But whilst you're just sitting there, you do become philosophical. You're also acutely aware of the weather and everything surrounding you, the road surface. And you do, a bit like Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, the character, that was it, Andreas was up the character. Yeah. And he becomes very philosophical. And I could certainly relate to that, you know, these long journeys, especially, you know, 8 hours riding through a desert, for example. You do start looking around and your mind drifts and you start thinking much deeper about things.
Okay, well, is that then really a pilgrimage then, not just traveling, or is that combination, a hybrid form of it?
I think it's part of the journey for me, and it's a journey I enjoy, not so much the arriving at the destination. Right. It's what happens between the start and the end of the journey, I find that's the adventure. You'll see also the photograph appearing now in the middle of the desert in Iran, for example. I had a puncture in the rear wheel of the motorcycle, and there was nobody to phone, nobody to ask for help. I had to repair it myself. Nobody passing, just me there in the desert with the heat of the desert as well. I was sweating, but I had to do it, and I think that taught me an important fact that, you have to do something. You can't phone anybody. And I thought I couldn't do it because I'm not really a mechanic at all. I had very limited skills relating to mechanics, a limited understanding even of how the motorcycle worked. But somehow I managed to fix it. I fixed the puncture, and on I went. Totally drained emotionally and physically, but I did it. I did it. I'm still proud of that fact now.
Yeah, well, I would imagine so. So, is there a kind of secret? Is there a way to learn valuable lessons from circumstances or experiences like that?
I think it teaches you perseverance. You need to have a strong sense of belief in what you're doing and persevere to actually achieve that goal. And yes, maybe that has taught me a lot about life, to actually work hard to achieve the things I want to do in life, and generally I've done that.
Wow. So yes, traveling then teaches us something about life. And it goes something that goes just beyond the idea of survival. Is that so? Is that in addition to what we learn in our day-to-day life, we learn about a dimension that goes a bit beyond?
Yeah, I think meeting a wide range of people, because when you travel, especially traveling on a motorcycle, you don't stop at the places where, let's say, all the tourists would go to. I would stop at the most out of the way roadside cafes and meet some incredible people. You'll see a picture now of a group of traveling people I met. I think one was possibly a sadhu, and I shared a cup of tea and some breakfast with these people, not far from the Golden Temple in Amritsar in the north of India. And I spent half an hour talking to them, and just before I left, this man gave me 10 Indian rupees. And I said, no, you need the money more than me. And because he was a very poor man, I said, I don't need 10 rupees. He said, take it. So I said, look, I will take your money on the one condition: I will never ever spend it, and I will always carry it with me as a token of love. And I still have it now in my pocket. Never spent his 10 rupees, but I was so touched by one of the poorest people gave me money.
Oh yeah, that's quite something.
Well,
we are coming close to an end. So give the last question for Mr. Macdonald. Does he advise people to travel? And if so, what would your advice be when they are planning for their trip, for their choices?
I think, of course, by any means necessary, whether you go by foot, bicycle, hot air balloon. I think in terms of planning, I met a German couple on a separate trip on the motorcycle in Transylvania, and they were planning a trip around the world on their BMW, and they spent 2 years planning every single day of their trip. But by the time they've reached Brasov in Transylvania, they've thrown away their plans, because you can't really travel I think on a schedule like that, it spoils it, because the beauty of traveling independently is if you go somewhere and you like it, you spend a bit more time there, you know, and if you think it's a place where you don't like, you move on. And I think to plan things, that you can have a basic plan, but to have a really structured plan, I think destroys the whole idea of it, in my mind anyway.
Okay, well, dear friends, you have heard. If you intend to travel, here is some wisdom that you can learn from. Thanks so much, Mr. Macdonald, for sharing with us your wisdom, your experiences. And dear friends, thank you for your time, for your attention. And please keep giving us some likes. Please help us to grow. And remember, this is Repeal 100, where we talk about religion, we talk about philosophy, we talk about science. Today, we have spoken about the philosophy of travel, an interview with Ewan Macdonald. Thank you so much. See you next time.